These are 5 things that I never should have done when it came down to my gut health. But realistically, they're 5 mistakes that people make all the time when they're trying to do something good for their gut health. And in reality, it's usually just a waste of time. And at worst case, could even be detrimental. The first one is drinking kombucha. I used to drink that stuff thinking that I was getting all this additive gut health benefit. All I realized was when I was drinking 2 or 3 of them a day is that I was taking in an extra like 60, 65 grams of sugar. That being said, can kombucha have a health effect on the gut? It's possible. There are probiotics in it. However, there is like no human data on kombucha, like showing any benefit. That's what's hard to tell. There are probiotics in it. It's fermented. So there probably is a net positive as far as the gut is concerned, but not when you really factor in the sugar. So I'm not telling you to not drink your kombucha, but I am telling you that if you're doing it to try to improve your gut health, it might be a waste of time. Like there's nowhere near the impact you're going to get from like kefir or from kimchi or possibly even from sauerkraut. But like fermented dairy has the most documented evidence stacked for it. So if you're trying to get a gut health benefit, you need to go with like kefir or yogurt, and you're going to get, I could probably say 3 to 4 times the bang for the buck than you would by drinking a kombucha without the sugar. That being said, there are antioxidant properties to kombucha. So that has been demonstrated. So it's not all bad. It's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze for the amount of sugar you're taking in and the gut health benefit you don't really get.
I put a link down below for something that might help you out when it comes to fasting. It's a 30% off discount link for Thrive Market. So whenever you're shopping for food, it's really difficult to find things that have good quality ingredients. Thrive Market makes sure that anything they bring into their store passes a lot of tests. They turn away thousands of products and ingredients because they are sticklers about what they bring on their shelves. So that link down below gets you 30% off your entire first grocery order through Thrive Market and gets you a free gift when you use that link. So down below, underneath this video in the top line of the description.
Number 2, this one's not as exciting, but I have to be real here. I used to avoid fiber because the carnivore community was fine without fiber. So I would think, okay, well, I don't need fiber. Well, funny thing is, the carnivore people, they don't need fiber. Things change. Okay, so if you're doing carnivore, I'm not saying you need fiber, but if you're not doing carnivore, you need fiber. So I've tried doing that, and trust me, it was not a pretty end result. But a lot of times when people do add fiber and they have issues, they're doing it with all the wrong things. They're getting it from like a bunch of whole grains, and they're not drinking enough water, or they're trying to use like whole wheat. So they're going to eat like wheat bread, where the net negative is probably much more than the net positive. Like you're not getting a bunch of fiber eating a slice of refined whole wheat bread. You need to slowly increase your fiber intake, and realistically, you need to be getting it from things like fruits and vegetables. I know that is lame to say, but the water content, the soluble fiber content in simple fruits and vegetables is head and shoulders above trying to get it from whole wheat or trying to get it from grains. Although the fiber is there, your bang for the buck comes from the fruits and veggies. All right, this one's wild. So you never would have guessed that I was a guy that tried doing juice cleanses. You bet your bottom dollar I did. When I was 280 pounds, of course I tried doing juice cleanses, and all that would happen to me was I would get weak. But there was a 2017 study that actually promoted juice cleanses, and I've seen it float. I still see it float around social media. It was published in Scientific Reports. Basically had these people go on a 3-day juice cleanse, and they lost a bunch of weight. Okay, and they had these like pretty decent positive results. They had a reduction in what's called firmicutes, which is the bacteria that's associated with weight gain. Okay, and then they had them go on like, I think it was like 17 days or something like that, a maintenance diet. Okay, and that maintenance diet, or 21 days is what it was, and then 17 days is when they started to gain the weight back. So 17 days into a maintenance diet, they gained the weight back, and then it basically reversed all the benefit they had in their gut. So, okay. That being said, there's still some caveats with the study. So yeah, people did lose weight. It was kind of a net positive, but they were still eating 3 servings of fruits and veggies in their maintenance phase. So they were still eating a lot of good food. They were eating 1,310 calories in their maintenance phase. So they're going to keep the weight off because they're eating 1,300 calories. Like that's not that much. I mean, sure, it's decent for dieting, but I mean, that's not real life is the problem. But what's cool is there was a study that was published in Nutrients that set out to review this. So they reviewed it further and they're saying, you know what? Like, here's what's interesting. Yes, they had a reduction in firmicutes bacteria, but they had a huge reduction in Bacteroidetes as well. Bacteroidetes is like the polar opposite of firmicutes, which promotes healthy weight. So they had a big reduction in Bacteroidetes, possibly even more than the firmicutes. So yes, their bad bacteria went down, but so did their good bacteria. So it just diminished them. So who knows what that could do long term, because they were able to maintain like sort of a low diversity for that 17 days until things reversed. I don't think that juice cleanses are entirely worthless. I know that I'm going to get destroyed for saying that, but I think that for some people, they're a form of caloric restriction that works. I don't think it's the best idea because you get no protein, you get pretty much just pure sugar with nothing to buffer it or nothing to slow down. So if you're, insulin resistant or something, it might be even catastrophic for you. So, but getting the weight off is important. If that's a way that you can do it under control, I can't rain on that parade, but doing it for gut health is you're just getting sugar with no fiber, and you're just diminishing the plethora of good bacteria that's in your gut as well. If you do something like this, or you change your diet and you kind of change your gut microbiome a lot, I think it's a good place to add a probiotic in, which I don't always tell people to consume probiotics daily. Like I think if you have a good diet, you need it intermittently, but you don't need them all the time. Okay, number 4, this is a weird one because spicy foods would mess up my stomach. I would get kind of a stomach ache. So with that, I started thinking that I needed to avoid spices because they were bad for my gut. And the more people that I talked to, I realized that they're like, oh, this can't be good for my gut. Like spicy foods are hurting me. Let me be the first to tell you that that is exactly what you don't want to do. There are lots of bodies of research, both human model, in vitro, a number of different mechanistic stuff that demonstrate that spices are good for the gut. So especially when you're looking at like turmeric, when you're looking at cinnamon, when you're looking at cardamom, things like that. Also ginger. I mean, ginger is hugely known for its digestive benefits. But there was an interesting paper that looked at cinnamon specifically. This was published in Plant Foods and Human Nutrition. They found that when cinnamon was added to meals, it actually reduced the rate of starch breakdown. So it delayed the gastric emptying. So it actually allowed for digestion to occur a little bit better. So basically it was kind of slowing down digestion in a good way, not speeding up motility so much that things are moving through, but actually allowing for proper digestion. In addition to that, this is what's really interesting. They found that cinnamon reduced the formation of what are called AGEs, advanced glycation end products, which can trigger inflammation inside the gut. So especially for people that are sensitive, when you have the glycation, basically proteins, and the glycation of certain sugars that can happen in your gut, this is absolutely a pro-inflammatory state. We don't want that occurring to a high degree. So promising stuff. So I guess with that, don't be afraid of adding spices, especially things like ginger, turmeric, even a little bit of cayenne. The last one, and this is one that clearly, if you've followed me for a while, you know that I don't follow anymore. But a lot of people used to think that like taking a break from food was hard on your gut. Check this out. There was a study that took a look at taking food breaks. So they had subjects go 2 days a week, reducing calories down by 69%. In the form of like a sort of an intermittent fast where they would just take a long break from food, eat a little bit that day, just 2 days a week. So like, for example, on like a Tuesday and a Friday, they would only eat, 30 to 40% of their total calories, maybe at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, and they'd fast the rest of the day. They did this for 8 weeks and they had an obvious reduction in weight. That was huge. A reduction in oxidative stress, kind of things we would expect because you have an antioxidant effect that kind of happens when you're fasting. But what was really interesting, just doing 2 days a week of sort of partial fasting, they had a massive remodeling of their gut microbiome just by doing that, to the point where they produced more short-chain fatty acids, which are exactly what we're looking for when we look at gut health. More short-chain fatty acids, those are more metabolic modulators. They help us oxidize fat. They help us oxidize glucose better. They help with the brain. They help with just fuel metabolism in general. But they also found that doing this 2 times a week, small amount for 8 weeks, reduced their blood levels of lipopolysaccharides. So it reduced the amount of particles that were coming in through the permeable gut wall and into the bloodstream, negative particles, bad particles. So when you reduce that permeability, you have less what are called inflammatory LPS, lipopolysaccharides, in the bloodstream. Pretty darn awesome, because it's exactly when we're looking at gut barrier integrity, like what we're trying to improve. We're trying to stop the gut from being permeable. We want it to be sealed in a nice, like safe, sealed junction area for food to digest and for us to properly assimilate fuel. So with this, kombucha, avoiding fiber, juice cleanses, avoiding spices, and flat out eating too frequently, those are the things I would change. I'll see you tomorrow.